After a slow start, Washington's 2-0.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, we are just getting back from Washington's 30-9 victory over Eastern Michigan's real nice game. We'll get into some of the, the concerns, offensive line, special team stuff later on, because the defense, they haven't allowed a touchdown through 2 games. Last time that happened, 1991. Interesting there. I'm noticing some things, but we're starting on the offensive side, as we always do, because Will Rogers led the way today. Will Rogers, 261 yards, 4 touchdown passes, fantastic performance from him and the entire offense. Jonah Coleman topped 100 yards today. But one thing I have to say before I let you get it in there, I was half right on one of my bold predictions. I said the first 2 catches would go to Jeremiah Hunter. He got the first one, missed out on the second one, but I'm taking that, calling it, half a win for me. But yeah, really nice game for the offense.
Yeah, well, I mean, to piggyback off your point there, Jedd, I think, is kind of just messing with us at this point. Like, what was my first key to the game? Start fast, play fast. No, it was yours as well, right? Play fast.
Well,
and the first 3 drives, you get what, like nine plays, like 10, 15 yards total?
34 total yards at the end of the first quarter. I will say, in fairness, he did say after that the first 3 games last year at Arizona, his team did the exact same thing where they started slow. So maybe we should take that into account next week against Wazoo, but we'll get there.
I mean, here's the thing about that. Like, Jedd's almost being too honest by saying that, because that's kind of an indictment on him as a head coach. Like, but again, at the same point, what's his record in those games? If it's 5-0, who cares? Because he's 2-0 in Washington. True. And that's the thing that matters. And here's the thing. Once the offense did get going, he had 5 straight scoring drives, 4 straight touchdown drives. It's not a matter of, okay, well, hey, we finally got one, and then it was, slug. Hey, another one. And then, it didn't seem to be a struggle in that regard. And also, I think the first scoring drive, the one to Decker, you got to see Maximus create at left tackle. So there was some kind of, still growing pains and things like that. So again, it's not necessarily a surprise that the offense is starting slow, but it's almost a testament to Jedd, as I say that it's also an indictment, because look what happens when he does get going. His team still win. They win in convincing and dominant fashion. So it's not a matter of, is Jedd a good coach? It's just, why is it that you can't, whether it's 8 p.m., 12:30, why do you start slow?
Lars, I'm really glad you mentioned Maximus McCree there, because that was one of the biggest things that I noticed is there was a switch when he came into the game, where one of our biggest concerns along the offensive line coming into the season was Sawani Fasolo, where he's the one guy who didn't really have any experience coming into the year. And, I really don't want to bag on the kid, and we're going to certainly talk more about the offensive line, but he still has a long way to go technically. That's one of the most apparent things when you watch him, is that he is just he's a redshirt freshman. Was a developmental take and still has a long way to go. His frame gives him a very, very high ceiling. His movement skills give him a very high ceiling, but he's not there yet. And that's one of the biggest reasons that Max was brought in. And he certainly just provided a spark to the offense, whether it be in the passing game and the running game, where he looked really solid. And he certainly also has a long way to go to get back into football shape, especially after what he had to go through in 2023, which you wrote a fantastic story about over on Athlon Sports, when he had to step away from football, help out his family, help out his mom, and all that sort of stuff. So seeing him get back into football shape and getting back on the field and playing well against an Eastern Michigan front that early on looked really, really good is really fun to see, and really awesome for him personally, for this team too, because when we look at what Will Rogers was able to do, where we need to talk about Jeremiah Hunter here, where he was able to find Jeremiah Hunter and really show that Washington's offense is, I don't want to say multifaceted, because we knew that they'd have a really solid rushing attack with Jonah Coleman. We knew that this passing game was going to be good with Denzel Boston, who had 2 touchdowns today. But knowing that the ball can be spread around like this, where Denzel had 3 catches and 2 of them were touchdowns. Giles had another really nice day with 6 catches, I think he's what he finished with. And Jeremiah is the leading receiver, 5 catches, 72 yards and a touchdown, being able to spread the ball around like that. And of course, Decker scoring again, where spreading the ball around like that is really, really nice, and being able to really, truly do what Ryan Grubb always loved to promise and have a balanced offense is exciting to watch.
And that's why Will Rogers was the perfect quarterback coming from the Mike Leach, point guard quarterback offense, where that's all he's was asked to do for 4 years in Mississippi State. Well, 3, because that last year a little bit different. But actually, it would be 4 because he was there. Yeah, either way.
Yeah.
Because his first 3 seasons under Leach in Mississippi State, he was about getting the ball in space, getting it checked down running backs, just getting the ball out quickly, having everything spread out. That's the whole. Now, Jedd doesn't run the air raid, but to your point, it's about kind of in a similar way what we can talk about the defense and talk about later. You can win in multiple ways. You can do it with Jonah on the ground. You can win with the arm of Will Rogers. Ideally, you want to marry the two together, but you also can do it in different ways where sometimes it's, Giles last week kind of carrying the majority of the load, or, it's kind of spreading it out like they did today, but it's also kind of what this offense, the kind of the depth dictates. You don't necessarily have now again, we both agree Denzel is a 1, but
yeah,
he's still, again, kind of like a lot of these guys still building into that role, he's not rubber stamped, 120 every game like Rome was. So again, as we both know, he has that ceiling and we'll get there, but week 2, they're still not there yet, but it's still good enough to get a significant 21-point win.
I've got 2 things for you. First of all, it's always really great when, shout out to a couple of friends of mine that always make sure to tune into the UW games because they know I'm there and everything like that. One of them just shoots me a text halfway through the first quarter. It's after Denzel's first catch, the only one he had that wasn't a touchdown, and just says, "Yeah, Denzel's going to be a dude." I was like, "Yeah, I know." Like I've been telling you this for a year and a half. It's great that you're finally on board. So shout out to my buddy Nick for that. But then second thing is, it's always nice when coaches, like there's a certain level of coach speak that we get in every interview. Shout out to Kevin Cummings for just being completely honest about what this offense is going to be, because somebody asked him the question. We talked to him a couple weeks ago, said, you got a couple of guys that can be considered number 1s. And he said, there is no number 1 in this offense. And I'm going to quote our guy, Alex Katzen over at Huskies Wire with me, who in the box said, "Hey, Giles Jackson led in receiving last week. Jeremiah Hunter did this week. It's got to be Denzel's turn next week." So it's nice to just kind of see them really spreading the ball around, which is an exciting thought in this offense with having all these guys who can beat you in such different ways, just all thriving.
Exactly. And if you think about it, they still haven't probably clicked to their full potential in terms of, if you just give them a scoring drive on all 3 of those first, you can get 9 points on those first 3 drives instead of going, punting the first 3 times. How many yards does that add to the total if you're able to complete those drives, or at least get 2/3 more than what you had? Now you're talking about, Denzel and Jeremiah both getting 100. You're not talking about, who is it this week? It's because that's still the difference between, again, we both love Ryan Grubb. Yeah, he didn't have a balanced offense. The FanDuel and our Locked On Huskies odds would both say that the chance of you getting 2 100-yard receivers in a game was more often likely than not, which is crazy to think about because it's hard enough getting 1, let alone 2. But that's the potential in this room, and yet they're still probably like at 60% there. Just imagine when everything starts to click, when the line's fully there, everything's all meshing together, and they've kind of built that chemistry in a game situation, because they've done it in practice. So it's why they're 2-0. It's why the offense still is, Will has 4 touchdowns, no interceptions on the afternoon. It's all working. But imagine how much better it can get when it's all polished, when it's all clicking. Because right now it's still actually not all clicking, and I just want to say that because that's still how good this team is. It's not a matter of like, I'm not saying they look bad. I'm saying they still can get much better. That's the whole point here, especially when you look at what happened around college football today. I'm just saying there's some gettable games now that I didn't think were as gettable initially. And
one that I might have said was gettable. No, don't worry about that. We can get there.
I was more saying I think we might both be wrong on some games, but in a good way.
No, that's very fair.
Like, that's where that's kind of where I'm taking this. It's like either one of those games in October now could we be winnable. And so if everything works together, this offense scoring 30 plus a game, this defense pitching almost near shutouts, keeping the opponents out of the end zone. We talk about a slow start. That's what was so funny. It was a perfect opening. Like Washington has a slow start, and they're 2-0, and it's like,
right.
What?
There's there's still a lot to improve on both sides of the ball, and which is weird to say after a really, really strong defensive performance. Which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at LinkedIn. Because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role in any given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn because LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. And that's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the hiring process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Lars, defensively, I really don't know what I'm more excited about. The pass rush, 7 sacks, 2.5 from Zach Durfee. That's a fantastic talking point. But like we said in the opener, two touchdown, there are 2 games with no touchdowns allowed, which hasn't happened since 1991. I'm going to let you choose which way you want to take this.
I mean, or we talk about Washington starting slow with what? 70-ish, 30-ish, whatever. Actually, no, might as well look it up now. It was let's see, they had Washington had 36 yards in the first quarter. Eastern Michigan had, I believe, 48 yards total in the fourth quarter, 12 yards. So when we talk about how good this defense is, it gets progressively better throughout the game. Like it doesn't even let up. That's what makes it so impressive to me. And we talk about, and it's not garbage time sacks, right? It's not because those are really more for offense. And now you can say you can make a case for some garbage sacks on defense, but it's not like Eastern Michigan put in their backups when they're down 21 in the fourth quarter. No, they're still trying to make a comeback. Actually, all the best players for Eastern Michigan are out there trying to play their best to get out there. And you have Lance Holtzclaw get a sack. DeShawn Lynch gets a sack. It's all peaking at the end. And thoughts. Like no, that's what's crazy. But it's still all building. And that's what's crazy is, I saw Zach Durfee's comments after the game, which is like, yeah, we're all doing our job. And it's just like, when he said that, I was kind of sitting there thinking, I can envision Steve with the projector pointing, doing the laser thing, just being like, all right, guys, if all of you do your job like this, we'll be fine. So, and literally go tell the media that, because like, that's how simple I'm making this for you guys. Like, if you guys just execute this, we will be fine.
So I want to preface this by saying I think Zach had a phenomenal day. Zach was awesome. Seeing him get 2.5 sacks was incredible, especially after everything he's been through. Breaking out like this after being questionable, all that sort of stuff, just awesome. DeShawn Lynch impressed me more today. I mean that in a way of every time that guy was on the field, and we didn't really even see him till late in the third, early in the fourth quarter. Watching him move, it's just like watching a freight train that can't be stopped. Because once that guy gets moving, there was one play right before he got the sack. I remember tweeting out, like, DeShawn Lynch is really flashing as a pass rusher. He picked up their left tackle and just walked him back into the quarterback. And then 2 plays later, he gets home on the TE stunt, which is really nice to see. And it's just having a guy like that where Durfee is going to have more sacks. Durfee is going to have more pressures. He's going to have a better season. But knowing that there are guys like that, which is one of the reasons that I was so high on him throughout the offseason, throughout fall, just saying, watching that guy move, it's different. It's just plain different. And I also tweeted out another little fun fact, Lars. Washington had 2.5 sacks from defensive tackles today. They had 1 all of last season from the same position, because Javon Parker had a half. Sebastian Valdez got in there. Elenius Davis got in there for a sack. And that is so awesome to see. And a lot of that is created by guys like Durfee and guys like DeShawn, where DeShawn obviously can line up at both positions and do a lot of different things. But the fact that they have so many different guys, that is why we talked about this pass rush throughout the offseason. Why we talked about, this is what it can be. We were just, a week too early on the 5 sack thing, which we don't need to get into. But this is why we talked about it, where guys like Sebastian Valdez, guys like Javon Parker. I know you and I didn't really think that Elenius Davis was going to be a huge pass rush factor early on in his career, but seeing him get a sack is really great. Seeing Sebastian Valdez have a couple of really nice moves again, because he had a couple extra pressures in there. I'm sure the PFF grades will be very kind to him. Javon, same thing there. Where seeing such a deep rotation at the position is really, really exciting, and seeing it combined with what this edge rusher position is going to be, that makes me really, really excited about this front four.
Exactly, and that's the kind of whole point of this defense is it's versatile. You can pick and choose how you want to match up, and that's what we were talking about over the summer, which is, okay, how are you going to use all these pass rushers? Like you have so many of them, and you have even a relatively decent amount of interior tackles, but especially at that edge position, there's so many guys who we could throw out there, and now we're starting to see it come to fruition. It's like, yeah, Steve's going to figure out how to get the best 11 out there, and especially like this is all kind of building for Big Ten play, where I would imagine once you get into conference play, some of the other guys that we've seen, like maybe we won't see as much Lynch Davis, but it's good to know you have him in reserve. Right. So in case DeShawn isn't able to get home, where you want to go to a 5-man front or a even bigger package, you have all the guys to do it. And it's also a credit to them because obviously, like we all want to see the edge rushers get sacks, but I'm so glad you mentioned the defensive tackles, because that's one thing I think that Jason Capucci, and I'm not sure how much of it is on Capucci and how much of it is on just kind of the Belichick scheme, because I'm sure there's a marriage of the two, but having that interior pressure consistently, like we haven't seen that at Washington
since Vita.
I don't want to say, I was going to say, I didn't want to say it because again, it looks different because again, Vita was his own. Yeah. Because Vita was his own, basically it's like you have like 3 or 4 different Vitas. Like if you carve Vita up and you kind of slice the 4 people into one, that's because again, I'm not saying Sebastian.
Yeah, it's not that.
But it's just as good. And I think especially with a first year coordinator like Steve, where it's like he's coming from college saying, okay, I know what NFL D tackles need to do to get home. These guys all kind of can do similar, some good things in that respect. Let's see which one works well together. Oh, we'll just play them all. I don't care. Like, Jedd, you don't care about redshirting guys? You don't care about snap counts or anything? Even if they get 5, 10, whatever, they play in 12 games. Yeah, we want guys playing in 12 games. And I think that's kind of what we're probably going to have is you're going to have a lot of guys playing 3/4 to a full season of games. But the relative snap count, where we saw Logan Sagapalo only got 4 last week, had more today. It's all these sort of things working in tandem to be like, especially in these non-conference games. That's also kind of the cupcake of this. Because when we get into conference play, I do think it's going to be, those numbers will start to shrink a little bit and start looking more NFL-ish. Looking more NFL-ish, where you have like 3 guys instead of 4 or 5 at a position. But in that respect, it's good to know you have that. It's also a perfect time for these guys to get opportunities because, I think Zach mentioned it where it's like Elenius, is a Minnesota guy, Midwesterner. It's like, hey, it's nice to, see these guys get their chance, and especially for Zach knowing, what he had to wait and go through, and similar to Max and other guys, and Giles and other guys. There's so many guys that had to wait their turn. It's like, no, cool. Everybody do your thing. Everybody cook. We all want to have a 5-star restaurant here.
So speaking of just 5-star talent, 5-star play, we're not doing this on purpose. We swear. We're this far into recording and we've not said the name Carson Bruener. Like early on in the game, when Washington's defense needed to get that big stop early on 4th down, when there were a couple other plays that needed to be made, who was there? Carson Bruener. That dude is so dependable whenever you need him, wherever he's lined up. And he's just so much fun to watch. Like you could see on that 4th and goal play down at the 3-yard line, you could see that hole open up in the A gap, and you could just see, Carson's coming. And it's not going to end well for Cole Snyder. And that play ended up, of course, ended up as a bad throw because of the pressure. And there were a couple other times that you can point to and just say, yeah, Carson has been there. Lars, we've said that he's going to lead the team in tackles for the last couple of weeks. He hasn't done that. But do you care? Because I don't, not in the slightest, with the way he's playing.
No, and that's kind of why I said that with Belichick is where it's like, it doesn't, and Carson's by the way, Carson and Alfonso were probably the perfect linebacker tandem for that type of coach and that type of mentality where it's, look, I don't need to be the all conference guy. And by the way, it doesn't really matter because I'm just trying to get to the NFL. That's what all these guys are trying to do. That's what Zoe, Carson, and Cam Broussard, who all led the team with 6 tackles today, which was hilarious to read that on the box score 666. I was like, well, this defense is certainly made. This defense certainly did make Eastern Michigan's life hell today, so that is fitting. and starting with them, building out from the center, and it all just builds together. And you don't necessarily, there might be a game where Carson does have, 12, 13, 14 tackles or whatever, just because he can do that. But I think it's almost better that it's like, hey, no, nobody needs to make 12, 13 tackles, because that means somebody was out of position one too many times, or we had busted coverage or whatever one too many times. And so it's actually kind of on par for what we'd expect. I guess we expect, Carson to have 12, 13 tackles, 2 interceptions, stuff, because we expect that from Carson. But jokingly, half joking. But it's still a matter of, look, I don't think any of us in Washington fans specifically are going to care if this defense keeps pitching, near shutout after near shutout.
No, not the slightest bit. And Lars, talking about out of position and just some of the finer things need to be tuned up. There's a lot that needs to be tuned up along the offensive line and on special teams, which we'll get to right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And, if you're still looking to buy your Apple Cup tickets for next weekend, Game Time's going to be the best place for you, because they have so many great ways, like the Game Time Picks, where the curation makes it easier to save so much more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. They got their all-in pricing, which is one of my favorite features. When you toggle this feature, it shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, and seat views, where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Lars, special teams was not great today. Blocked a punt on the first possession. There was a blocked extra point a little bit later on. I know Jedd Fisch said he wasn't happy with the snap on that one. And there was also, especially early on, there was a lot of pressure along the offensive line. But let's start on special teams, where, that really hasn't been something that we've had to worry about in a long time. And I don't necessarily think it's a worry just yet, but that was not great today.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of ironic because Jordan Papa is the tight ends coach, so he's kind of really stretched pretty thin right now, literally and figuratively, in terms of, like, he got no bodies at his actual position group, and his other coordinator job is, a little bit rough in that regard. And part of that also is due because, you're working with limited blockers and things like that. But, I think in the grand scheme of things, I'm sure they'll get it worked out where, the block punt doesn't end up coming back to haunt you. And we didn't see too many of those kind of mistakes against Weber State, and you would kind of hope that maybe one bad
Sorry,
outing,
I want to stop you for 1 second, just because I want to reference something that Jedd Fisch said in a different context that fits really, really well, which is just Jedd Fisch called it the best quote he's ever heard from a defensive coordinator when he was talking to his post-game presser, because he asked Steve Belichick on the 4th and 1 conversion to Giles Jackson. He asked, hey, should I go for this? And Steve said, it's our job to stop them no matter where they get the ball. And that first drive right there is such a perfect example of that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that when he said that quote, I was like, hang it in the loo, like signs, like it's
incredible.
What's so funny is it's the most coach speak answer too. It's like, look, my job, and by the definition, if you actually were to break it down, is, well, what is the role of defensive coordinator? Well, no matter where the ball is at on the field, they are supposed to stop them. And
he's all about doing his job.
He's all about ball. He's a big ball guy. That's
huge ball.
Exactly, big ball guy, significant ball guy. But anyways, but getting back to kind of just the grand scheme of things, when you think about the snapping problem and things like that, Cam Warchuk, been at Colorado for a couple of years, knows what he's doing. Sure. Craziest thing about that kid, as I wrote on Athlon Sports over the summer, tore his ACL in a game and still ended up finishing the game. So if you're wondering how good, again, is what it is, maybe, again, I'm sure he'll tell you he could get better. But he also has the mindset of he's a guy who's going to take that approach and be hard on him, and Papa's going to be hard on him. So it's a matter of I don't think it's necessarily a cause for concern, like, oh, Washington State going to scheme up some things? Because Jedd and this coaching staff seem like, okay, you can beat us once on something. You ain't beating us twice, or certainly not 3 times. Like that. And if they do next week, like if Washington State blocks the punt next week, or there's special teams issues next week, then we might have something of a problem here. But until then, I'll give Pow and the coaches have the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The one thing, as long as we're on snaps, we got to talk about that bad snap from Lennon Hatchett, that skip past Damon Williams. Couple things there. First of all, it's really nice to know that these Damon specific packages are there and will be coming. And I feel that it's very safe to say he's going to play in every game when we see that. Credit to you there. Where on top of that, I feel that that's something where that's going to get sorted out really, really quickly. That's not like if somebody's going to point to that and say, hey, I'm concerned about that, I wouldn't be. Where I would be concerned is what's going on at left tackle, where that's going to be what I'm watching more so than anything else throughout the course of this week. Where I feel that we're going to get the depth chart on Monday. This is going to look the same, but throughout the week, I think we're going to start talking a little bit more about Maximus McCree. I think Sewanee Fasolo is going to start the next game at Washington State, or at Lumen Field against Washington State in the Apple Cup. But I think we're going to see the same thing we saw today, where I'm sure when we go back and check the snap counts that Max got more at left tackle. And then starting in Big Ten play, we might start seeing a little bit more shuffling along the offensive line, where that's going to end up being the final group that they roll out there against Northwestern for that first series. Like whenever they start Big Ten play, that's going to be the group they want to roll with, which, I'm sure we can look more into that in the coming weeks, but that's something I'm really going to be watching closely over the next week or two.
As you said, all that, Jedd and Brennan are an absolute savant. Like they're both absolute savants in that respect, because if you think about what Washington had to do, and by the way, not to piss Washington fans off, but I looked up Chris Adams' stats at Memphis and he played an entire game. So, if Chris had stayed, that probably wouldn't be a discussion.
We don't need to go down that road.
No, but the interesting thing about this, and it's a way why I asked Fisch on Thursday about this, about Max, when he said he's working through some stuff. And I'm like, well, is it academic? Is it, we have eligibility issues, or is it like, conditioning? And it's kind of just all that, because again, hasn't played football in 18 months, yada, yada, yada. As you said, the whole story here. But in a way, it's almost like it's a benefit to Sewanee long term.
Yes.
That Max ended up being the guy to come in, because it allowed the coaching staff to say, hey, you know what? We're good enough with 4 out of 5 of these guys on the line. And that's no disrespect to Sewanee, to win and be 3-0 in non-conference play and start Sewanee in the first 3 games.
To get him some reps, see what it looks like. Yeah.
We'll get him some reps and build his confidence, right? Because Max at the end of the day only has 2 years left. Sewanee's got 3 or
he's got 4.
4, right. So, but in the math on this is, I'm thinking, well, you ideally bring in a JUCO guy to start right away, play for a year or 2, he bounces out, and the guy behind him takes over. So in a way, it's almost like a role reversal, where Sewanee was able to get those reps because Max was still working himself back into physical form. So, okay, let him go, see what happens there. And then now as you start to get closer to Big Ten play, absolutely you're going to see Max more in kind of what I thought the initial line would be at full strength, at full health in terms of coming into the season. And obviously I can understand why it took him a little bit longer. If I didn't play football for 2 months and tried to get back into shape, it'd be a real struggle. So credit, Max is able to do it. But for me, I think that will be the game changer when they get to Big Ten play. You're absolutely right, because if you can solidify that left tackle position, like that, everything else has been pretty good. Enokk's done great. Like right guard.
Enokk has been really, really solid. Yeah.
Like I'm starting to question what happened. By the way, here's a fun fact for you on that same note. Enokk graded out as a top 10 offensive lineman on PFF. 2 other Washington linemen graded out above the first Ohio State offensive lineman. Maybe it wasn't on Enokk. So
that is very interesting, because because that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to talk about Enokk there for a second, because I know that he was somebody that fans were concerned with coming into the year, and this is one of the biggest reasons that missing out on Marcus Bryant sucked. You mentioned Chris Adams. I have to say that really did hurt. But looking at what Brennan Carroll's been able to do with Enokk is really impressive. where D'Angelo was really solid. He was the top graded offensive lineman on Washington against Weber State. We'll see what the grades look like for this game, but I know they're not everything, but this is what it was always about. It was about getting guys that can play within the system. And that was always what the Enokk take was getting a guy that can play in the system and be solid. And that's exactly what he's been. And he did it 3 positions last week. Now that he doesn't have to do that, that's really nice. And having a dude next to him, especially in Drew as a party, who is just insane, man. He is fantastic on that right side. Having a guy over there who can help him out is great. And that makes it better. And that makes it more exciting to have him where it's, okay, this is a veteran guy who understands Big Ten play. And while, he hasn't necessarily been able to tap into his full potential over the course of his career, Brennan has, I don't want to say he's there yet, but Brennan has done a really, really good job getting him up to speed and just saying, this is what we need to do. Whatever it is that he's been telling him, it has worked really, really well. And moving forward, that's something I really want to watch where, non-conference is one thing, but getting into Northwestern, getting into Rutgers, getting into those first couple of Big Ten games, if Enokk can continue to just be solid, you're not asking for more than that. And that's exactly what you're asking from the majority of the line. Just be solid. Just like on defense, just do your job and it can be fine. And that's all we've ever said that this line needs to do is be fine. If they're above average, great. If they somehow turn into last year's Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, awesome. Gonna happen. Feels like a long shot at this point in time. But if they can just play within themselves and give Will enough time to get the ball out, which he's shown he can do quickly to all 3 levels of the field, this offense is going to continue to hum. And they're, putting up 30 points a game right now, which is, it's not anything elite, but it's good enough, especially with the way this defense is playing. And that's all you can ask for. And Lars, with that being said, we're going to get out of here for the day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much for making Locked On Huskies your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast from NIL deals, never-ending conference realignment rumors. Our guy, Spencer McLaughlin, gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And to make sure you're updated with everything that we're doing over here, so much more fun stuff coming for you throughout the season. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you hit that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video like these post-game reviews that we're going to be doing. And if you got any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.